Hey Divine Ones, this is Jerome Braggs, the intuitive guide that teaches you how to be well and live deliciously as a soul having a human experience. And I wanted to come to you today and do a special live video. I know I couldn't do the live on last Wednesday for Wellbeing Wednesday because I was out of town. I was actually coming back in town from being out of town. I was really tired and needed to rest. So I wanted to come and do this video with you today, particularly because I've been receiving a lot of questions from many of you that follow me about trauma and specifically some of the messages that we hold, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves when we have been traumatized. So I want to kind of share about that and speak about that and use this video to speak more in depth about that today. One, because understanding trauma is crucial, is a vital piece of really learning how to live a life of well-being and really truly be well and live deliciously. Second, understand trauma is at the root cause of almost all of our dysfunctions, our addictions, our any type of suffering we manifest for ourselves in our lives, and most of the illnesses and diseases that we experience in our bodies. The root cause of that are these beliefs that are created from being traumatized. And if we want to experience well-being and heal these areas of our lives, healing these beliefs is the root cause, the root solution, and the root to the healing and transformation we want. So just to dive in really quickly, before we start, I really want to go back. I know I've done many videos about trauma, but I want to just go over it. If you're new to me, I want to go over this again. So when we're talking about trauma, what I'm talking about is what our soul, our higher self, understands about trauma and how it views trauma. And that's a little bit different than how we view trauma traditionally, especially in the West. So in the West, we have our definition of trauma and how we approach it and how we try to treat it comes from this understanding that trauma is something that happens to you externally. It's usually a horrific or tragic event that happens. So it may be a loss of a limb. It may be a drastic or dramatic accident that you've gone through. It may be a loss of a loved one. It may be a disease, a debilitating disease that you experience. It may be some type of abuse that you experience, maybe sexual or physical or something like that. But usually how we view it is some external event that happens to you. And so the treatment to that is usually trying to address the event that happened and how that event affected you. But from the soul's perspective, trauma is a little different. And when we get to that understanding, we really want to get to the root word of what trauma actually comes from. It comes from the Greek word, which means wound or injury. And so when we think about understanding we are souls having human experiences, we are literally incarnations of source energy or universal energy or love energy or God energy, however you want to understand it. When you really begin to think about that, then you understand that the only thing that can wound, there's only, from the soul's perspective, what is a wound or injury, right, to our being? And so from the soul's perspective, the only thing that is a wound to it is when we are disconnected from our higher self in some type of way, when we're disconnected from the truth of our being and the frequency of our being. And so from the soul's perspective, that is actually the trauma. So it's not what happened. It's not the event that happened that is the trauma. The trauma is what that event made us believe about ourselves and the world around us, and how that event made us now feel about ourselves and the world around us, and how those beliefs and that feeling is disconnected from our truth and our natural frequency. And so this is how, and I'm going to go into. So the trauma is that you're disconnected from the truth of your being and your natural frequency, which is the natural frequency of your being is love. You're really disconnected from the truth and the frequency of love. And these beliefs are what disconnect us, because when we become traumatized, this is what we begin to believe, and this is how we begin to feel. And there's three different beliefs and / feelings that we begin to embody in our consciousness and in our vibration chronically when we've been traumatized. And the first one is the first belief that happens is that there's something wrong with me and that I'm not enough somehow. And so, whatever happened, right, whether it was an accident or a loss of a limb, a loss of a loved one, a disease, whatever the trauma, or sexual abuse, whatever the trauma is, it wasn't the event. It's what the event made you believe and feel. And now you feel some type of, you believe some type of way that you're not enough, that there's something wrong with you. It could be either there's something wrong with your personality, your identity, meaning you're something like your sexuality or your characteristics or how you express yourself in some type of way. You can believe there's something wrong with your intellect or there's something wrong with your body, right? How your body looks. A lot of times, the color of your skin, or your gender, or how sexual how sexually appearing your body is, or anything like that. So, in some form or shape or manner, you start to believe that something's wrong with you and that you're not enough as you are, and that something about you needs to be fixed or changed in order to be enough. And what I mean by enough is that you're not lovable and acceptable and worthy of approval and value, just as you are. Right? So there's something wrong with you. That's the first belief. And why this belief is trauma, is a wound or an injury. And just like any other wound, just like a physical wound to the body, if it goes unhealed, what that belief begins to do is it begins to become infected, and it begins to spread the infection throughout the rest of your being. So instead of just this one area, all of a sudden you start to feel not enough in many areas of your life. And this begins to infect what you manifest as your life. Because remember, the law of attraction is really the law of reflection. So whatever you hold internally in your internal state of being, meaning what you hold in your consciousness and your vibration, manifests your external reality. It manifests what you live. It manifests your relationships and your money experience, and your entire external reality becomes a reflection of what you believe and how you feel, especially what you believe and how you feel about yourself. So if you believe and you begin to feel that, so why this is a disconnection first and foremost is because your soul, your higher self, knows that you are enough and you are unconditionally worthy and loved for eternity. It knows that, and that's how it feels. It feels worthy. It feels enough, and it feels complete an appreciation and acceptance of yourself. And when you believe that something's wrong with you, and when we start to believe we're not enough in some way, what we don't do is we don't appreciate ourselves unconditionally, and we don't accept ourselves unconditionally, especially that we don't accept the part of us we think is wrong with us, and we can't appreciate the part of us that we think is wrong with us. So we start to view ourselves as being something wrong. We start to see flaws in us. We start to criticize and judge ourselves and reject aspects of ourselves, when our higher self is only accepting and embracing and loving of the totality of us, because it views all of our being as worthy and enough and valuable, and it appreciates all of our being. No matter what we look like, no matter what our sexuality is, no matter what our color is or gender is, no matter what the shape of our body is, no matter what our health status is or our economic status is, our higher self knows and feels that we are enough and we are loved and lovable. And so when we've been traumatized and we hold that unhealed trauma in us, which is the unhealed wound of feeling like something's wrong with me and that I'm not enough, we start to feel a lot of shame. And shame bleeds the energy of love out of our bodies. It disconnects us from the energy of feeling the energy of love. Of feeling the energy of love. Shame is an aspect of fear, by the way. It's really, you're fearing something's wrong with you. And that because of something being wrong with you, you won't receive love as you are. That's another piece of the message of that part of trauma. That something's wrong with me, and because there's something wrong with me, I won't be loved fully just as I am. Right? And again, that's disconnected from the truth of you, because the soul knows you are loved as you are, just as you are, and you deserve to be loved as you are, just as you are. And so when we have shame, shame is a toxic energy to the body. Shame bleeds love energy. You've heard me talk a lot about life force energy, which I also call love energy. It bleeds that energy out of the body, and the body was created to house love energy. And so when we don't have love energy in our bodies do not have the energy that they need to be healthy and to work well. And so they begin to manifest illness and disease. This is why trauma is one of the root causes of disease. That's why science has found there have been many countless studies now that have found a correlation between experiencing childhood trauma and experiencing a disease in your adulthood. So if there's been many studies where they found where if you experience some type of childhood trauma and you haven't healed it, basically, then the likelihood that you will experience a disease in your adulthood, some type of chronic disease actually in your adulthood, was very, very high according to these studies. Now, what a lot of healers and sages and mystics and teachers, what we know is that the trauma is what causes the disease. Because one, you can't be disconnected from love energy. The body can't be withheld from love energy for too long and stay healthy. Again, the body was created to house love energy. So when it doesn't have love energy within it, when it has shame in it, right? When you have a lot of shame held in your body, in your energetic field, and not enough love in your energetic field, you're going to be out of balance from what the body needs to be healthy, and it's going to get sick. Right? So that's why trauma and disease connect. And you're going to see again how it connects in the other two messages. But the first belief is that there's something wrong with me. So that's how it creates disease. How it creates dysfunction is when you believe there's something wrong with you. When you believe there's something wrong with you and you're not enough, then what you're going to try and do, because one of the basic needs is you need to feel loved. You need to feel you need to feel a sense of love and approval and belonging. And so if you believe that there's something wrong with you, you're going to start suppressing or hiding or trying to fix or change that thing you believe is wrong in order to receive approval. And you're going to so much need approval because you don't have it yourself. Because when you believe that you're not enough, what you're not giving yourself is appreciation and acceptance and approval. And so when you don't have a lot of that, which is loving of yourself, you're going to try and seek it externally a lot. And so when you get into this rat race of constantly trying to seek approval, constantly trying to seek external approval and doing anything and everything to get that, including suppressing yourself, playing small. You'll play small because if you believe that if you're big enough, if you be your real self, they'll figure out that you're not enough. And they won't love you, so you won't be yourself, or you won't. Some other things that we do when we feel there's something wrong with us is we do perfectionism. We try to make everything perfect, everything right, all T's crossed, all I's dotted, and we stress ourselves out. We do this to the detriment of our well-being. We stress, we don't feel a sense of ease. And it doesn't come from this view, it doesn't come from a place of true soul inspiration, meaning that's not what your soul is actually asking of you to do. Is more, you become a perfectionist because you are afraid that if everything is not perfect, they're going to shame you. And they're going to not approve of you, and they're going to find out that you're not enough. And so you do this rat race of perfectionism, and you're in overwhelm, and you're constantly taking on more and more and more. So when you believe there's something wrong with you, there's a lot of things that happen. You hide yourself, you may suppress yourself, or you may become a perfectionist in some way. Again, it's all coming from shame. You have the feeling of there's something wrong with me is really what shame is. You feel ashamed, and you'll do a lot of things to try and soothe that shame, right? And also, this is where addictions come from as well, especially sex addiction. A lot of sex addictions come from having experienced the trauma of not feeling enough. And so a lot of people will use sex, and this was something I know I've done a video on my own journey with sex addiction. We use sex when you have a sex addiction. Sex comes from this, you're using sex not because of the pleasure of it, or not because you want to feel connected to a person. You're using sex to gain approval. Sex is the way that you feel like you're enough in the moment. Like if somebody's having sex with me, then I'm attractive enough. I'm worthy enough for them in this moment, right? And so you'll use that to try and soothe the wound of not feeling enough. So that's really the first belief. And there's a lot more to this. I teach a lot of this in my workshops and with my clients and all of this type of stuff. And I'll do more videos on this. I just wanted to share a little bit about the beliefs. So I don't want to dive too much into what this belief creates in our life. I will do another video later on that. But just to let you know, the first belief that we hold when we've been traumatized is there's something wrong with me. I'm not enough and I won't be loved for being my full self just as I am because of it. The second belief that happens is that the second belief that happens when we've been traumatized that we embody, it says it's not safe here. It's not safe here in the world. And it's especially not safe here in the world to be all of myself, to be my true self. And again, that can happen. That's in many different ways. You know, if you may have just been being yourself and got abused for it some way, or maybe you got rejected or teased for being yourself, or from being some aspect of yourself. You know, maybe you were really weird. Maybe you were really silly and weird when you were a kid, and your peer group was not. And so they made you feel like something was wrong with you for being that way, right? And they teased you for that. And they maybe bullied you for that. Maybe you got sexually abused or physically abused as a child. And so your idea of safety, of being safe in the world, was disconnected, right? And so this particular trauma belief begins to be instilled in us somehow. And that belief, again, is it's not safe here, especially not safe to be myself. And so what happens with that, again, why this is a trauma, why this is a disconnection, why this is a wound that disconnects us from the truth, is our soul, our higher self, knows that the safest thing to be in the world is yourself, and that this world is a reflection of you. It's not something happening to you, it's happening through you. And so this world is a safe place to be. And not only is it a safe place to be, but this is the place your soul wanted to be. The soul does not manifest itself. It does not incarnate itself in any experience, in any dimension, in any lifetime, from a space other than the sheer joy and the sheer desire to be there. And the sheer knowing that this experience that it is manifesting itself into is an experience that it is going to experience vast amounts of joy and growth and love. Again, when you understand that you are literally God energy incarnate, you are a part of the all that is, the source, the love that is all that is, you have to understand that God is not going to do anything that it absolutely does not want to do from the sheer joy of it. So the fact that you are here, that you chose to come here, means that this lifetime you really want it. Not you wanted to try and prove a point, not that you want it because you were trying to learn so that you could graduate. It was you came here because you knew this lifetime was very, very, very delicious. This earth experience was a very delicious place to be, and you were literally chomping at the bit to get here. I've seen this countless of times when I did mediumship work, when I would talk to souls on the other side, and have deep conversations with them. I cannot tell you how many souls told me and affirmed that this life experience is the golden ticket. That this is what all souls want. They want it. Not they're coming here like begrudgingly, because there's a lot of teachers that say, "Oh, we come here begrudgingly. This is kind of the hell experience, but we try to graduate." That's actually not true. This is the prime real estate area. But the problem is we experience some type of trauma when we're in our childhood, and we don't heal that trauma. So we keep instead of creating and experiencing heaven on earth, which is what this is, we experience a hell on earth, because you cannot experience hell from disconnection. I mean, you cannot experience heaven from disconnection. Heaven The creation of heaven and the experience of heaven is the experience of being fully connected to your truth and your natural frequency. When you're disconnected from those things, you're going to experience hell. This is why understanding where you have trauma and learning to heal your trauma is so important, because healing your trauma is the key to experiencing heaven on earth. So, anyway, going back, the second message is I am not safe here. And so when we don't feel safe, what we start to feel a lot in our bodies is stress. And when we don't feel safe, that means we feel threatened. And when we feel threatened, we operate the fight, flight, or freeze system in our body. And that floods our body with stress hormones. And those stress hormones suppress our immune system. So while we continue to feel, we can't feel unsafe and not suppress our immune system at the same time. And this is why a lot of illnesses and diseases come. Again, the body cannot be suppressed. Its immune system cannot be suppressed and stay healthy at the same time. So when we don't feel safe, we are operating our fight, flight, and freeze syndrome in our body, and that floods our body with stress. And when we are stressed, we are creating illness in the body instead of wellness. So that's, again, where that trauma and the illness and disease correlate and connect again, right? And the other thing that happens when we don't feel safe is that we start to armor up. We start to operate defense mechanisms, right? And so we don't move through our lives fully being expressive of who we really are. We start to be guarded. We start to try and push people away. We don't really fully experience love. We don't manifest fully loving relationships. We don't allow ourselves to be transparent and honest and vulnerable because we're afraid that if we are those things, we'll experience pain or danger or suffering in some type of way. And so we shut down. And our lives, when we shut down in that type of way, what our lives start to feel like is bondage instead of freedom. This disconnects us also from the experience, from the vibration of freedom, which is another aspect of the frequency of love. Freedom is another aspect of the totality of the vibration of love. And so when we feel unsafe in the world, we don't feel at ease and we don't feel free, because we don't ever really fully express ourselves in the world. And we also begin to armor up and in some type of way, whether that armor is hiding, whether that armor is keeping people away, whether that armor is not being vulnerable and transparent and honest. And so we don't express the fullness of our being in the world, which one, makes us feel in bondage, and then two, if you don't fully express yourself, you keep the fullness of God from expressing through you. And you don't ever really manifest a life that authentically meets your desires and needs, because you're never being authentic. So you're not authentic in your life. You're not fully expressing your life, and you can't manifest desires and goals that are authentically pleasing to you. So that's another aspect. And again, I promise I will do. I'll be offering some classes and some workshops, but I will definitely be doing more videos on how, when we have unhealed trauma and these different beliefs, what they manifest in our lives. I'll be doing that, but I just want to get what the actual message is out there. So the first message is there's something wrong with me and I'm not enough and I won't receive love just as I am. The second message is it's not safe here, especially not safe to be all of myself. And so when we have that message, we start to shrink. And we start to not express our full selves. And before you know it, you create a life for you that is too small for you. And it feels like you're in bondage and you're in prison. You're trying to do that to try and stay safe, because you believe that if you become the bigness of you, the fullness of you, you won't be safe. But what ends up happening is you experience some modicum of safety by doing that, but you also are unhappy. You are sad. You don't feel free. And you start to feel like this life experience is not worth it. That's what happens a lot when we have that particular message, that belief system of trauma running in us. We start to feel like life's not worth it. And you start to feel like this experience here is not worth being here, right? And so the last message that we hold when we've been traumatized is that all of my needs won't be met, and unless I meet them myself. And this often happens when we have grown up in environments and with caregivers, whether they were parents or grandparents or aunts or whoever was our caregiver, when they didn't meet our needs, whether they didn't meet our needs for love, whether they didn't meet our needs for safety, whether they didn't meet our need for approval and connection and belonging, whatever that need was when we were a kid, if they, neglected us in some way, or if they abandoned us in some way, or they weren't as attentive to us, or weren't as compassionate and caring with us, we will begin to develop this kind of belief system that all of my needs are not going to be met unless I meet them myself. I have to do that. And what ends up happening when you do that is you begin to not trust in life. You don't trust the universe. You don't trust in others. You don't trust in life. You begin to be untrusting. And here's one thing: remember, your internal state manifests your external reality. Right? Again, your internal state of being, meaning the beliefs that you hold and how you feel, particularly what you believe and how you feel about yourself, manifest your external reality, your life experience. And so when you believe that the world cannot be trusted and that people cannot be trusted, especially to give you what you need, you begin to manifest a life that seems untrustworthy. You begin to manifest people who will flake on you, who never meet your needs. You're always having to meet their needs. You just don't trust. And another thing that this happens as well, you will when we don't feel that our needs are going to be met, right? One other thing that disconnects us from the fullness of our experience on the other side. So you don't trust the universe. You don't have a relationship with your guides. You don't have a relationship with your spiritual team, right? There are people, not just people in the physical world. You don't have a connection with the beings in the spiritual world either. So that's when we really get disconnected from all the help that exists out there for us. You've all heard me talk about my guides, the beloveds. You've heard me talk about that I'm guided from my grandmother who transitioned many years ago and many other ancestors. And that opened up when I began to trust life more and I began to believe that my needs were going to be met. The more I began to trust, the more I began to open up into this higher dimension, a whole nother world of guidance and help and support. And so when we don't believe our needs are going to be met, we don't feel supported, we don't trust. This makes us stress out. This makes us take on too much. This makes us try to do everything ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to be helped. We don't allow ourselves to receive more. We begin to have a toxic relationship with receiving. We always are giving out instead of receiving. We're always taking too much on to our plate. We don't allow ourselves to be helped and receive help. And so this is a thing that happens when you've been traumatized and you have this particular message running. You have a disconnection with trust. And again, why this is a wound again is because the soul in our higher self knows that this universe is trustworthy because this universe loves us. And it also knows that we are connected to everybody. We are a part of everyone, and not just people we see physically, but also into all the entities in the spiritual realm, to the loved ones who've gone on before, who've crossed over or who passed or died, or however you want to understand it. We're still connected to them, and not just connected to them, but they are willing and able and trying to offer help and guidance for us right in the now. And when we do not trust that our needs are going to be met, we get disconnected from that help. We get disconnected from that guidance, and we get disconnected from our own intuition. We don't begin to listen and trust in even our own selves. We're always trying to make and force and push things happen, and we don't open up. And this is another thing that happens when we don't get this message, that this wound, how it begins to infect our lives, is we don't allow ourselves to receive the magic of this universe. How the universe just wants to give to us and offer good to us at every turn. We're constantly trying to make good happen instead of letting it happen. Instead of trusting that good is going to happen around every turn, we're always looking for the other shoe to drop. We're taking too much on. We are not trusting in other people. We're not trusting in our relationships. We're not trusting in the universe. And so this begins to create a very chaotic and stressful and experience of suffering, really, because we feel very disconnected from life and from our own selves. And so this is the third message, and these are all the messages, right? That I'm not enough, so there's something wrong with me. I'm not safe here, especially not safe here to be myself, and my needs won't be met, especially if I don't meet them myself. And this is the disconnection. This is the wound. Because the higher self believes and knows and feels completely worthy, completely enough. It can feels completely safe and at ease, and it trusts in this universe because it knows it is this universe. And it knows that it is fully loved by this universe. And it knows that the universe only ever wants to be good to it, right? And so this is the thing: when we are traumatized, we cannot create and manifest a very well life. What we create instead is a life that reflects back to us our beliefs and our vibration. And that a life that makes us feel more that there is something wrong with us and that we aren't enough. A life that reflects somehow that this we aren't safe in this world, and it's not safe in this world to be ourselves. And a life that reflects that, yeah, your needs aren't going to be met, and you're just going to get just enough, and you're just going to eke by, and you're going to have to work really, really hard to meet your needs. That's the type of life experience that we manifest for ourselves when we've been traumatized, and we are manifesting that life. It's not that we are creating that life, meaning we're not consciously choosing to have this life experience, because nobody would choose consciously to create a life of suffering. It's just that we have beliefs in us that are manifesting this, because the universe's main responsibility is almost only responsibility is to create a reality around us that is a reflection of our internal state of being. And when we've been traumatized, we hold beliefs inside of us in our internal state of being that do not allow us to manifest a well life. Not a well body, nor a well life. Our body is just a reflection of our internal state, and our life is just a reflection of our internal state. And when we are disconnected from the truth of our being and the frequency of our being, which is love, which is basically love. When we are disconnected from love, we cannot create and manifest a life of love. The only way to manifest a life of love is to heal our trauma. We have to heal our trauma. We have to reconnect our belief system, our consciousness, back to feeling worthy, feeling safe, and trusting. Those are the main areas. If you can reconnect your consciousness, your belief systems back to this world is safe, I can trust it, and I am enough. And you start to feel that. You start to feel worthy. You start to feel safe and at ease. You start to feel trusting. You will begin to almost magically begin to manifest a life for you that is one of deep and delicious well-being. But it cannot happen while you still hold that trauma unhealed within you. The trauma is going to continue to create traumatic life experiences. Life experiences that continue to affirm, yep, there is something wrong with you. You know, you're going to have relationships with people who make you feel there's something wrong with you, or that you're not enough some type of way, right? You're going to create health situations that are going to make you feel that there's something wrong with you and that you're not enough in some type of way. If you don't feel safe, you're going to create relationships that make you feel unsafe. Whether they're intimate relationships, work relationships, family relationships, you're going to create some type of health situation that makes you feel unsafe. If you don't feel that your needs are going to be met, you're going to create experiences and relationships that make you feel like your needs aren't getting met. They're not going to meet your needs in some type of way, right? and as well as health situation that just feels like your needs aren't getting met. Your external reality is only mirroring back to you your internal state. And so, if you want to change this external reality that you're living, if you want it to be more delicious, you want it to be healthier, you want it to be happier, you want it to feel more free, you've got to change your internal state, meaning you've got to do the work to heal your trauma. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I do with my clients. I help them heal the trauma by reconnecting them to the divine truth of their being and to the frequency of love. That's really what I do. That's why I tell you that loving ourselves is the key to everything, because that's what loving yourself is about. It's about continually, daily reconnecting yourself to the truth of your being and the frequency of love. But I just wanted to come in really quick, you all. I know that is, I spent a bit of time on this, but so many of you have been asking me this question about trauma and the messages of trauma, and I wanted to give you those. Those are the three main messages. There are a few other messages that we hold in trauma, but these are really the three main ones, the three umbrella messages that everything else kind of falls under. And these are the beliefs that we hold that begin to create dysfunction and addiction and disease in our bodies when we go unhealed. And when we do heal them, they create thriving, and they create good health in our bodies, and they create happiness and freedom and a life that feels like heaven on earth. You are really here to experience heaven on earth. That's why your soul came here. It came from heaven to experience another dimension of heaven. And the key to experiencing the dimension of heaven is to return yourself to the truth and frequency of who you really are, which is love energy. And then you will begin to create and manifest a life of love, and which is heaven. Heaven is the dimension of love, by the way. So I hope this just helps you understand a little bit. And again, if any of you all are watching and you are wanting help, or you're a spiritual seeker and you are ready to truly be well and live deliciously as a soul having a human experience, I would love to work with you. That is what my work is all about. And healing your trauma is a part of my work. So until next time, you guys, I love you deeply. Now go love yourself. Bye.